Iowa's quarterback room appears to be set. Spencer Petras, Alex Padilla, Joey Labus all set for spring practice in a couple of months. But will it remain intact? Will that quarterback room remain intact after spring ball? We'll talk about it. Plus, Kirk Ferentz extended to 2029. A quick reaction to that announcement, as well as an exclusive interview with incoming Iowa defensive end Kaden Crawford. You're listening to week 187 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. This is from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Are you a Hawkeye fan living in Story County? Well, if you are, great. If not, we've still got you covered. Introducing From the Hawkeye of the Storm, your source for original Iowa content from the Eye of the Storm, the Hawkeye of the Storm, Ames, Iowa. That's right. Our Hawkeye platform, hosted by StoryCounty.news, strives to offer a unique perspective that you won't find anywhere else. Despite living amid the sea of red that is Cyclone Country, we make it our aim to entertain and inform Hawkeye fans everywhere. From live programming following an Iowa athletic event to our on-demand podcast, Brada's Branded Thoughts, which you can access through YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Amazon, and more, our goal is to always offer cutting-edge black and gold content. In addition, catch our weekly college football picks throughout the season as you get prepped for the weekend ahead. And the great thing about all of our content is it's all free. Join us regularly here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm, and be sure to subscribe to our sister channel, Iowa Football at the Voice of College Football. That's Iowa Football at the Voice of College Football on YouTube, as we have teamed up with Mark Rogers and former Iowa football assistant coach Don Patterson to bring you live post-game shows after every Iowa football game. Watch, chat, and even call in to let your voice be heard each and every weekend this fall. Want to learn how you can further support us? Visit our video description on each and every YouTube video we publish, and then, of course, enjoy the content. It's From the Hawkeye of the Storm, hosted by StoryCounty.news, for the best Hawkeye content in the area. Week 187 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. I'm Corey Brada here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, and it's been a while since we've been with you on our weekly podcast. It's going to be kind of a bi-weekly thing during the football offseason, but we're still going to produce regular content on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. We will continue to pump out regular, sometimes daily content. This week has been a busy news week for Iowa football. And certainly with Iowa basketball season in full flux, we are on there regularly. And of course, this Sunday, tomorrow, we're recording this on Saturday, January 15th. We'll be with you tomorrow, Sunday the 16th, for an Iowa postgame with Coach Gary Close after Iowa and Minnesota. So for today on the podcast, great interview coming your way in just a few minutes with incoming Iowa defensive end Kaden Crawford. I am super pumped to share this interview with you. Kaden will be enrolling in Iowa early. He's actually moving to Iowa tomorrow. I had a conversation with him earlier tonight, and just super excited for him. You know, it's a kid who, you know, is 6'5", 250 or so. Certainly he's going to have a full spring and certainly this summer to get even bigger. I think, you know, I talked about this. I know we had our show with Aaron Graves a couple of weeks ago, but I think Aaron Graves has an opportunity to play right away. Kaden Crawford would be there as well. I think Iowa's defensive line, I think personnel-wise, they're looking pretty good on both sides of the football. Now, Kaden Crawford, the reason I would give him a legitimate chance to play his freshman year is because he's here early. You know, that spring, getting that spring and certainly summer conditioning should pay huge dividends for Kaden. So I'm looking forward to sharing that interview with you. And again, anytime Iowa can beat out the likes of an SEC school, a couple Big 12 schools, maybe 3 Big 12 schools off the top of my head, and a little school called Nebraska for a defensive end, that is good news. And certainly he stuck with Iowa despite some activity from other schools trying to get him to decommit along the way. So again, look forward to sharing the interview with you in just a few minutes. Want to get to a couple subjects first before we get to our interview with Kaden. A couple news items this week, I guess you should say. Of course, we talked earlier this week over on the YouTube channel about news that Tyler Linderbaum would be heading to the draft. No surprise there. Tyler's going to be making millions of dollars next year. And certainly the decision makes sense injury-wise and just, again, financially. I mean, he's got to do what's best for him. You can't blame him for that. Charlie Jones coming back to Iowa. That's great news. Riley Moss is coming back. We know that. We haven't had a weekly podcast here since the Citrus Bowl. So, of course, if you follow our content on the YouTube channel, we've covered that game. And and kind of a wrap on the season at length. We will be over at the Iowa, the Voice of College Football channel tomorrow night, Sunday night, with Coach John Patterson for a special season finale show with Coach. And then, of course, Ivory Kelly Martin, Kyler Schott, they're moving on. But Sam Laporta, Jack Campbell coming back. So Iowa's roster starting to take some shape now. And, of course, there are some early enrollees at Iowa. And, of course, again, we mentioned Kaden Crawford, who is enrolling beginning tomorrow. Moving to Iowa, I should say tomorrow. TJ Hall, another one. Of course, if you followed our content, you know that Coach Patterson has been a huge part of TJ Hall's recruitment. But when you look at Iowa's early enrollees, Brian Allen's another one who I think, because he's enrolling early, has a legitimate shot to get his way into to push his way for some playing time. And then Drew Stevens, again, this is according to Tom Kakert of Rivals. I know he confirmed that Drew Stevens is enrolling early. And then, of course, Xavier Wampa. We all know that he's planning on being there this spring. So, opportunity for some of these defensive guys to make an immediate impact because they're getting there early. And I'm not aware of any scholarship offensive players who will be enrolling early. So that's sort of an interesting dynamic there. Certainly Iowa's struggling offensively. Perhaps they're going to pull a rabbit out of their hat. We did hear that Iowa's recruiting a running back out of Stanford. Not a ton of information on that one. I know, again, Nate Pete out of Stanford. He was originally from the Midwest, was recruited by some high-profile schools, shared running back duties at Stanford this past season, ran for about 400 or 500 yards, somewhere in there. And so, he's a guy who's not real big, kind of reminds me a bit of a Mekhi Sargent. He's a long striding back. That's kind of how I describe him in watching him on tape. And then, of course, Iowa's still in the mix for Hunter Norzad, the big offensive lineman out of Cornell. Norzad's in the process of visiting 5 schools, including Penn State, Illinois, Virginia Tech, and, of course, Iowa in there as well. So, there might be some portal action. I think the ship has sailed. If there ever was a boat anywhere near Iowa City, the ship has sailed on Iowa getting a transfer portal quarterback. And perhaps you would call that hogwash in the first place. I, of course, got my hopes up like the unreasonable fan that I am. That's what I am. I am a fan. It's not happening, barring some change. Now, we did hear, I should address this as well, did hear earlier this week, Chad Leistico of the Des Moines Register reporting that Alex Padilla's dad told him, Chad of the Des Moines Register, that Alex is sticking around for now. So that's the news. I don't know how much it's news, right? It's news. It's certainly noteworthy. I don't really know how newsy it is, because if Alex Padilla competes with Spencer Petras during the spring and it's clear that the coaching staff favors Spencer, why would Alex stick around? He's not. His dad saying that now doesn't guarantee he's here this summer, or certainly in the fall. So that's good to know that he's at least going to be here to compete in the spring, especially since Iowa has not made any move towards the portal at that position. So that's good. And of course, Joey Labus will be there as well. Carson May is not enrolling early. So again, we'll see where that brings us, but the quarterback room going to look pretty similar to the quarterback room we saw this past fall. All right, the other big storyline that I want to get to before we throw it over to our interview with Caden Crawford, and this is the hot topic in Hawkeye Nation this weekend. Kirk Ferentz agreeing to an extension of his contract through year 2029. That is a little bit surprising to me. I'm certainly not an agent. I don't really know what goes on behind the scenes there. I can tell you this, and I've had some people ask me how I feel about the contract extension. I love Kirk Ferentz. I've said that so many times. I think he's a great man. I think he's a great leader. I think he's done a lot for this program. I think he's an excellent football coach. I think there is a segment of the fan base that is upset by the extension. I don't think that's fair to Kirk. Kirk has given a lot to the program. I think he's been through a lot, and some of it may be his own doing. You could argue that. Certainly some of the things that came out last summer about some social issues or discriminatory issues that maybe weren't being adequately addressed. And I give Kirk Ferentz the benefit of the doubt that those things have been addressed. But I think it's fair to kind of get restless without Big Ten titles. That is a normal thing. All right. Kirk Ferentz has been here 23 years. Iowa hasn't won a Big Ten title outright in decades, not under Kirk Ferentz, right? The last Big Ten title Iowa won was 2004, and it was a shared title. So I understand the restlessness. I understand that. I also understand that Kirk Ferentz has an obligation to the fan base right now to figure this offense out. And I have my ideas as certain things that need to happen. In my opinion, I'm no coach, but in my opinion, certain things that need to happen. And I've been very, very forward about the fact that for the first time in my fandom, first time in my life, I have been advocating that Iowa go to the portal at quarterback. I'm not a guy who calls for that every year. I've defended Spencer Petras. I've defended Alex Padilla. I defended Nate Stanley, Ricky Stanzi, James Vandenberg, Jake Rudock, CJ Beathard. I've defended all of them. And during that time period, there have been fans that have called for those quarterbacks' heads. I've also defended Brian Ferentz at times. Greg Davis I defended him at times. I defend him now. Iowa went 12-0 in 2015 with Greg Davis. Ken O'Keefe, I've defended him. But I'm not going to sit around and not be critical when there are things that need to be changed. And for the first time this season, for the first time in my life, this season, I have been advocating for Iowa to go get a portal quarterback. But it's just not going to happen. Now, if Padilla leaves after spring, does Iowa consider it? I would hope so. But, man, that's not really being real forward in your thinking, because let's be honest. Again, we talked about that scenario. Padilla, say he doesn't take a step ahead of Spencer. He's not locked in to stay. The portal is open. And you may say, well, Alex Padilla is not going to start somewhere else in the Power 5. That may be true, but maybe he just wants to start somewhere, folks. We don't know that he's not interested in going and starting for a Ball State or going and starting for a Tulane. We don't know that. So that is certainly a possibility. I would hope that if he were to make that decision in the spring, again, I have no reason to think he will at this point, but if he were to make that decision, or Spencer Petras somehow made the decision, that Iowa would at least look at the portal for quarterback. The problem is, folks, there were a lot of quarterbacks in the portal over the past couple of months, and Iowa has passed on all of them. I don't believe Iowa's made any pushes for any quarterbacks. So there's a possibility you're going to be left with not much of a selection, right? Let's just look at what's available right now. Jackson Dart out of USC is available. There are a couple other guys. The kid from Florida, I don't believe he ever officially entered the portal. There was word he was, but I don't believe he ever did. Jack Plummer was rumored to be going to Cal, but he's still available, I think. I haven't heard anything official from Jack. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that. But again, it hasn't been real public. I'm assuming he'll be enrolling there this spring. We'll see. But most of these quarterbacks have been picked over, and rightfully so. Talked about Jaden DeLora. I was an advocate for Iowa going after him. He went to 1-11 Arizona, an Arizona team that won one game last year, maybe the worst Power 5 in the country. Arizona got him. Maybe he wasn't a fit here. I don't know. But my point is, Iowa didn't make a move, and it is what it is. Iowa, I have no doubt that Kirk Ferentz understands that this offense needs fixing. So at this point, my idea, and again, it was just one aspect of what I believe needs change for the Iowa offense to get better. It didn't happen. So as a fan, if maybe that was your desire, maybe that was something you'd advocated for, what's left to do now that Iowa went a different route? We'll support him, right? Support Kirk Ferentz. He has done a lot to deserve our support as Iowa fans. He's done a lot for the university, for the Children's Hospital, for those players, for his assistants. I understand the criticism of having your son on the coaching staff, and especially when it's a position, the offense, or a side of the ball in the offense that is not very good right now, not good at all. Support him. Perhaps there'll be some changes made behind the scenes that will change this offense for the better. Do I have evidence to suggest that those changes will be made? No, I don't. I don't have any of those. What evidence do I have? What claim could anybody make to me that would say that they have proof that Iowa is going to take a big step forward offensively? I don't have any evidence to support that. I don't believe anybody would have any evidence to support that. The quarterback room is going to be pretty much the same. The wide receiver room is going to be pretty much the same, which is actually good news because they got Charlie Jones back. But how much is Charlie Jones going to improve from one season to the next offensively? I still think they could get him more involved. I think he's probably been open more than they've been able to find him. So quarterback play, again, that comes back to quarterback play. How much is that offensive line going to improve? I think it can. I think they have personnel that can make it cumulatively better, especially on the outsides at tackle. You know, who's going to replace Tyler Linderbaum? That's going to set you back, right? On the offensive line. I just don't see anything as of right now, January 15th, that tells me that this offense is going to take a big step forward. And again, if you look at the history of the Iowa program under Kirk, it's never been very good, right? 2002, they were pretty good that year. They were good. They weren't great. They were good. They haven't really been good since. Now, they ran the ball decently well last year 2020 during a COVID year, and they ran for over 4 yards a carry. That's certainly an outlier. The offense needs fixed, folks. Kirk Ferentz is here. I don't believe he's going to be here through 2029. Now, according to the Athletics' Nicole Auerbach, Ferentz has now been upgraded to a $7 million salary, which is broken into a $500,000 base salary with $5.5 million in supplemental compensation and a $1 million longevity bonus. Now, the Des Moines Register has reported that the salary for Ferentz this season, or this coming season, was originally going to be $5.1 million before any potential bonuses. And again, that has been moved to $5.5 million in supplemental compensation plus his base of $500,000 plus a $1 million longevity bonus. So he's making a little over $7 million, well, right about $7 million a year. Again, the extension going through 2029. Do I believe he's going to be here for 7 more years? I don't. Actually, more like 8 more years, folks. I don't believe that's going to happen. I believe the next contract actually expires in January of 2030, I believe. I would think this is the last extension he plans on signing. And again, he has earned the support of the fan base through 23 years, but it's okay to desire more from these football teams. I don't believe the claim that Kirk Ferentz needs to be fired is valid. That's everybody has a right to their own opinion, especially if you're a paying fan. I don't agree with that at all. But he deserves the support of the fan base. So support him. Support Spencer Petras. Support Alex Padilla. Whoever is quarterback. You have no fans, media people, really. Nobody has any play here, right? There's no unless you're, again, we've talked about this. Unless you're donating tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars to the program, you don't really have much say in what goes on. So support the heck out of them. Maybe they'll shock us. Maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe what I look at is a 8 to 9 wins max next season. Maybe that turns into 10 or 11 wins. Again, I don't see it, but maybe it will. So support them. Listen, I can tell you I will be. I'm not going to sit on my couch and throw a pity party because I'm upset that I haven't seen any changes from the outside offensively. And again, it's early. It's July. And I'm talking strictly about the transfer portal. Maybe there will be some changes with philosophy. Maybe it will be with play calling. Maybe it will be. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a portal quarterback coming in here in late spring. It's possible, right? But regardless, support this team, support Kirk Ferentz because he has earned the support of the fan base, whether you like the extension or not. All right, last thing I want to bring up before we throw our attention over to our interview with Kaden Crawford. Iowa basketball hitting the hardwood again tomorrow afternoon with Minnesota, 1 p.m. Central Time, BTN, again, Sunday the 16th. But a little bit of reaction from the game the other night against Indiana. First of all, you probably heard our post-game show with Coach Gary Close, which airs after every Iowa men's basketball game. And I found it interesting. We were all celebrating. It was a good win for Iowa, 83-74. They allowed 48 points in the first half to the Hoosiers at home, which is a losing number. But then they came back with 26 points allowed in the second half. And, of course, everybody praising the defense. And I agree, the defense forced some turnovers, although some of those 23 turnovers for Indiana were unforced. That's just the reality of it. I believe Coach Close referred to how Indiana handled the ball as like they were handling a bar of soap. So that can give you a mental picture. But I think it's good to be positive. This team is 2-3 now with 3 winnable games on tap. I'm not saying they'll win all of them, but they get the likes of Rutgers, Penn State, Minnesota, these next 3. They got an opportunity to win some games. At least I think 2 of those 3. I think that's reasonable to think they can steal one on the road and beat Penn State next week at home. But I think it's also fair to say that we should be careful not to overreact to that second half against Indiana. And Coach Close actually kind of put me in check as it relates to that second half.
Actually, I think their defense overall was, I think when they analyze it, is going to be mediocre, especially in the first half. I mean, it's a classic, it's a classic defensive situation where if you're giving up shots around the rim, you're giving up layups and you're giving up threes, that's how you get beat. You got to try to get them inside the arc, but not at the rim. And they gave up a lot of layups in the first half, way too many. And that's what got them down. And second half, obviously, they didn't give up as many, but you got to take it with some kind of a grain of salt because they had so many turnovers. Now, whether if they hadn't turned it over, what would they have done? And I would deserve some credit for some of the turnovers, but some of them were unforced. And so, as a coach, you got to look at it realistically. Hey, what's going on here? How well are we playing, even though we won? It's good to learn and win rather than always learning when you lose. And their defense has got to get better, especially protecting the basket with their man. They had to get out of their man because it just wasn't good enough. And it probably was a good move, especially with Keegan in foul trouble. I think that had the other reason why they did it, is to protect him from getting any more fouls. But from a man defensive point in the first half, they could not stop him. And the other thing Indiana did poorly is they shot very poor from the free throw line. And so that affected their scoring in the second half. So, as I get back to, you got to be honest and looking at the numbers and looking at the whole situation as to how good did they play. And they were better in the second half, but I don't think they were as good as people, the differential of going from 48 to 26. I think Indiana had something to do with that.
If you look at Ken Pomeroy's ratings, which Ken Pomeroy takes a look at offensive and defensive efficiency, and then he ranks each team overall. But he looks at those numbers, the offensive efficiency and the defensive efficiency, relative to your strength of schedule and your opponents that you've faced off against. Now, Iowa hasn't played a tough schedule, so I wouldn't say these numbers are maybe 100% indicative of where they'll be in a month. But just to put this in context, Iowa overall, according to Ken Pomeroy, as of today, January 15th, Iowa is ranked number 22 in the country. And you may say, that's great. They have, according to Ken Pom, the number 3 offense in the country. That's nothing new. We've seen that offense out of Iowa these last several years. And really a lot of Fran's tenure at Iowa. Defensive efficiency, ranked 161. Folks, that has gone down overall. Now, I can't break it up by half. I don't know what it would have been at halftime against Indiana and how much it swung, but they have went down. Okay, now they did end up out-rebounding Indiana, which is impressive because Indiana is a good rebounding team, and Iowa was losing the rebounding battle at halftime in that game, but Iowa ends up winning the rebounding battle 35-31. That helps. But I'm just quoting what Ken Pom has right now. And again, these are metrics. You can say the numbers don't lie. Number 3 offense in the country, number 161 defense in the country. To put that in perspective, if you look at the overall rankings of every Division I team, there is no other team ranked overall in the top 79 that has a worse defensive rating than Iowa. The next closest would be number 80, Syracuse, ranked number 222 in the country, which that's unbelievable when you think about Jim Boeheim and that zone they like to run, that defense. But they're 222. That's the closest to Iowa. So once again, we're looking at a situation where Iowa's trying to overcome a pretty porous defense. I still think this team can be good defensively. I have seen visual improvements. I saw them during the second half, but they also gave up 48 in the first half. So all I'm saying is let's pump the brakes. Let's see what they do on the road. Can they defend Minnesota on the road? Can they defend Rutgers on the road? Those two teams are not offensive juggernauts. If Iowa can go in there, play good enough defense to win these next two games, I think the numbers here on KenPom will reflect such, and I think it's time to start talking about this team being an NCAA contender. But until I see them do it on the road consistently, and again, half in and half out, play better defense, I'm still going to just be a little bit cautious here as we move into late January. All right, let's throw it over to our interview with incoming Iowa defensive end Kaden Crawford out of Lansing, Kansas. Kaden set to be part of what should be another tremendous defense under Coach Phil Parker. Enjoy the interview. Pleased to be joined by Iowa class of 22 commit, and now we can say signee. Kaden Crawford is with us out of Lansing, Kansas. And Kaden, it's a pleasure to see you and get to know you this afternoon. And I want to start by talking about signing day this past December. I know it had to have been one of the biggest days of your life so far. I would expect that now that you're going to be a Hawkeye officially, you're going to have plenty of other big days in your immediate future. But just talk about signing day and what that was like.
I think it was a pretty special moment for me and my family. Just everything working up to that moment all kind of came together, and it's kind of a surreal moment just knowing that getting to go get my degree paid for and continue to play the sport I love. And it was an awesome moment for me and my parents sitting down, watching me sign that paper. And I'm really grateful for the University of Iowa and the football staff for giving me this opportunity. And I'm just excited to get to work.
Now I have to ask you, this was a class, and I brought this up to, I believe it was Addison Stringa when we talked to him. But this was a class that was sort of perceived by the outside world to be behind. Especially this past summer, people were kind of concerned. The recruiting pundits were concerned about Iowa's class. And it came together. Let's be honest. It came together this fall. Yeah. Where were you as far as committing? Were you the second commit to this class?
Yeah, I was the second commit.
Wow. And that was this past February. And, of course, Aaron Grades had been committed for, 2 years?
Yeah, he was – I saw the stuff about how he committed on the spot. But, yeah, it had been like 2 years since they had to commit before I did.
So what was that like knowing that you were just the second kid? Does that go through your mind at all that, this is a thin class. I'm just the second kid and we're just, 10 months away from signing day. Did that go through your mind at all?
Not really. I've been pretty new to the recruiting stuff. I wasn't really deep into following it when I was younger and stuff. So I didn't know how many players we should have and stuff. I thought 2 obviously was low, but I thought just reading stuff, we were close than a lot of other dudes. And our next commit didn't come for a few more months. And going into this last 2 months, we were still kind of low, and then Xavier committed, and pretty much everything started falling into place. And so I thought it ended really, really well.
I got to ask you about Xavier, not to put him on a pedestal, because I think this class is just exceptional all around, yourself included. But when you look at what he has done just to the perception of the class, and certainly I think that snowball effect occurred with him committing prior to signing day. That had to have helped the university and the program. But what's it going to be like knowing that you're going to have a lot of experience and a lot of fresh young talent as well playing behind you in that secondary?
Oh, it's awesome. Knowing guys back there while we're rushing the passer up front. We got dudes covering, giving us time for the quarterback to sit back there and make decisions to throw. Because, we pulled in 4 defensive backs this class, and they're all exceptional. So it's going to be really fun rushing the passer while we got dudes back there locking stuff up.
Absolutely. So when I try to do somewhat of a due diligence, and of course we're limited with the tape we have of high school play from you. But when I look at you on tape, and again, if I'm wrong on this, you just call me out for it. But the strengths that stand out to me, we're talking defensively, because you played a lot of quarterback in high school, correct?
Yeah, this last year and this year, yeah. So
I think it's clear. I don't know if people have made this comparison, and I'm not by any means saying that you're like Joe Evans, because you're bigger than Joe Evans. But Joe Evans, as you probably well know, has turned into a pretty darn good pass rusher, especially given his size, played quarterback here in Ames. So I guess my what I would say as far as strengths when I look at you on tape, physicality, and you've got tremendous defensive vision, because you also played a lot of linebacker. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, last year I played outside linebacker, and I got moved to middle linebacker this year.
So would you agree with that assessment, and would you add to that? I'm sure you would add to that list somewhat.
I'd say, yeah, physicality and defensive vision. I think playing quarterback helps a lot with seeing the field, and playing linebacker, you got to be able to see lanes and see where blockers are coming from. So I think quarterback and linebacker has helped my vision. I played a little bit of defensive end this summer, and then we had a new defensive coordinator. I got moved to middle linebacker, but I think what you said there is pretty accurate.
And so how do you foresee that helping? I mean, I could guesstimate as to how I see that helping you defensively, but sometimes with a young defensive end who is a dominant pass rusher at the high school level, maybe there's a learning curve as far as it relates to run stopping and sealing the edge. I'm not saying that you're not going to have a learning curve there, because there's going to be a learning curve when you head to this level, but I would have to think you feel like your experience at linebacker helps you as far as that learning curve relating to stopping the run.
Yeah, just playing outside linebacker a lot last year, and then this year playing middle. I think with the whole like run stopping, I'm really comfortable with it, because just taking on blockers, double teams, and stuff last year and this year, I think that will be one of my strengths, knowing how to kind of defeat like leverage and stuff and hands. I think pass rushing will be a big curve. I think all around will be a big curve. Just me not playing a lot of defensive line, but I think some of these past 2 years playing, I think it'll do me pretty well on kind of being comfortable with it and trying to get ahead of the curve.
All right, so this is a question that I ask everybody, and sometimes maybe it takes you a moment to think about it, but weaknesses are just obviously a part of football, and again, talking about the learning curve. So what are Kaden Crawford's weaknesses right now?
I think lack of playing the defensive line. Didn't really play it at all in high school, so that's going to be a huge thing going into college, kind of learn how to do that. Really learn how to rush the passer, which is obviously goes into that. I think those are two pretty big ones. Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of not aggressive, but kind of just waiting to see things a little bit slower. I got to be quicker on that, and I think those would be my probably top weaknesses.
What's your relationship like with Kelvin Bell? I know he's done a tremendous job so far at Iowa.
It's really good. Real down-to-earth guy, genuine. Not everything's about football. He'll tell you the truth. He's not going to sugarcoat stuff or lie to you. Like, if he sees stuff on your film that you need to work on, he's going to say it. If we're talking about Iowa playing and they may have not played well, he's not going to be like, he'll just be straight up about stuff. And I think that's a really good quality to have, especially in the recruiting process, a coach that talks like that. Never once. Some coaches promise playing time. Never once has he talked about, you'll play this, you'll play that. It's all, you got to come here and put the work in and stuff like that. But I think really like him as a coach, and that's one of the parts that helped seal me to commit into the Hawkeyes.
And so that goes into this next question. What sold you on Iowa? Obviously, Kelvin Bell played a role in that. I don't know how much of a relationship you had with Phil Parker yet, but what sold you on Iowa overall?
Obviously, what I just talked about, Coach Bell, and then just seeing the success they've had developing dudes along the defensive line. Send a lot of the guys to the pros, but even the ones that don't go are really good college football defensive linemen. The program really just like consistently is a winning bowl game team. You hardly ever see Kirk Ferentz have a bad football team out there on Saturdays playing, but I really like that. Coaching staff is stable. A lot of this crazy stuff's been going on with college coaches going around everywhere. He's been there for 23 years and don't see it changing anytime soon. So that's been a really positive thing for me. And then talking with Aaron Graves a lot, he recruited me pretty hard just about how everything goes and stuff. And he also helped sell me on Iowa.
Yeah, everybody talks about Xavier Wampa and what a difference he made in this class. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the fact that Aaron Graves had been committed to this class for 2.5 years, something wild like that. Nothing disrespectful to Xavier, phenomenal player and kind of brought the class together. But I think without Aaron, it's a lot different. He was kind of like the stone, very beginning, laying down the concrete. Yeah, and I asked Aaron the same question when we talked to him a few weeks back. You look at this current group of defensive linemen, and it's deep. Kelvin Bell likes to run a lot of guys, keeps guys fresh, which I think has helped here over the years. But, pass rushing probably improved. That's probably something that they're going to be working on this offseason. You talked about something that's something that you want to improve as well. So I guess what do you bring to Iowa that will stand out? I mean, something that maybe is unique to Kaden Crawford.
I think kind of just my track background. I ran a lot growing up. I think I run pretty well for my size. Physicality, as you said, and I think I'm a pretty explosive player. And I think doing that alongside the edge really is like a positive quality for defensive ends and outside edge rushers that not a lot of dudes have, but I think I can contribute in that way. And I think that's one of the big things for me.
Okay, so you're just glancing through some of your offers and schools that really pushed for you. Of course, Kansas State was on the list, Minnesota, Nebraska. People don't realize Nebraska is less than 3 hours away from your place, specifically Lincoln, Oklahoma State. What was the recruitment like for you? Were there moments where you, I guess who were the top schools? I mean, if you had to narrow down from those 5.
Towards the end, like before I committed, my top 3 were K-State, Nebraska, and Iowa. Oklahoma State was in pretty early and talked to them a lot, and then they kind of just faded away. They talk like just whatever. And I went up and took a self-guided tour to Nebraska, self-guided tour to K-State, and I was really, really sold Nebraska. I talked with their defensive coordinator, Coach Nander, almost every day, and I just going up there, I was just like, I don't know. And just watching everything through Iowa, some of the Zooms I didn't make up a trip up there until after I committed, but I really thought Iowa. I like K-State a lot too, but I thought Iowa was where I wanted to go. So,
how difficult was that though to not be able to visit before the commitment?
It was hard. I didn't think a whole lot of stuff was going to change. I really liked how everything was set up in the winning program, and I mean, I kind of seen some stuff through Zoom and did my own research on the city, and I didn't really think much was going to change from me visiting. And it did. When I ended up going to watch one of the spring games, it was more than I thought. It was nicer than I thought, so it was even another plus.
Absolutely. Did you get a chance to visit? You visited Kansas State, correct? Or did
you? Over the summer I did, this past summer.
So were there any moments where you wavered at all?
I mean, a little bit. K-State never stopped recruiting me, so I took a trip up there and went or whatever. And I mean, I liked it, but it wasn't changing my mind. So after that, not really.
Again, you're talking in-state, so you'd have to think you committed somewhat early. I mean, nowadays that's somewhat early to commit because we see how many kids are committed there, either the month of signing week or the day of signing of the early signing period. So how hard was that to turn down an in-state school? And was Kansas involved at all at some point? I know they're not on the list here, but did they reach out at some point?
Yeah, so Kansas State was pretty hard. I mean, everyone on their staff talks. I think every single coach on that coaching staff called me during my recruitment. I was really close with the recruiting coordinator, the head coach, and the D-line coach. And I didn't grow up a K-State fan, but they made it really, really hard for me not picking them. And then KU, they actually offered me over this last summer. They called me when the new coaching staff came in and recruited me hard. But I mean, I was never really sold on them. I appreciated them recruiting me and stuff, but I was staying with the Hawks.
Absolutely, and we appreciate you doing that. And so, who did you grow up a fan of? Or did you grow up a college football fan?
When I was younger, I was an Oklahoma fan. Kind of when I started getting recruited, I threw that all away. Because I mean, I didn't want to be biased. I wanted to give every team and every school an opportunity to recruit me. So once I started getting recruited, I pretty much threw that all away and kind of was neutral on everyone.
Talk about dealing with the doubters. It's something that just is part of being a kid at any level, but especially when you're coming in, you're a 3-star kid, there's going to be people who doubt you. How do you deal with that?
I deal with it. I mean, I can't control what other people say about me, and I don't really think it matters, honestly. They can have whatever opinion they want. The only people that really matter are my family, my coaches, and close friends who I keep close and make sure they're honest with me and stuff. So if people want to go out there and say I'm not this or that, I mean, they're entitled to it. That's their opinion. Recruiters want to say, writers want to say I'm not this or that. That's fine or whatever. Just going to do my best to prove them wrong and do whatever I can to get on the field and make a difference,
Absolutely. Your experience in Lansing, Kansas. First of all, did you live in Lansing your entire life? Did you grow up there?
I was actually born in Missouri. Lived in Liberty, Missouri up until my second semester of freshman year and had to move because of my dad's job, but lived here ever since, yeah.
So what was the experience? I mean, how much are you going to miss high school football and your teammates and just the experience there, the coaching staff as well?
I'm gonna miss it a lot. Playing football this year was pretty fun. My senior year, just playing with some of my best friends. Um, gonna miss some parts of school, like just being around people that like my friends and stuff. But ultimately, I mean, it was awesome living here, great town and everything. But ultimately, I thought it was best for me to come in at semester, which I'm going to be doing, graduating early, just trying to get in and for my goals of playing early. I think it sets me up the best to do that, accomplish that.
Are you close to any of the players on the current Iowa roster? I know you talked about your relationship with Aaron Graves, and you met Brian Allen. Are you close to anybody in the current roster or somebody in this 22 class?
Yeah, I'm close with most of the commits on the 22 class, but current players on the roster, my host was Seth Benson, so I'm talked to him quite a bit. And then Joe Evans and John Wagner, I met and talked to them a lot over the official visit. And then Arlen Bruce, who's also he played his senior year in Iowa, but he was a Kansas kid mostly. I talked to him a lot, and I'd probably talk to him the most, him or Cooper DeJean, and then Mason Richmond a little bit, being also a Kansas kid. But those are not a whole lot, but just a few of them.
The current defensive line group. Let's start with the recruits, though. So yourself, Aaron Graves, Brian Allen, and then I include Landon in this mix because I don't know what Iowa plans to do with Landon. He seems like a really versatile kid. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you foresee him playing defensive line or you even want to hypothesize on this. But how would you rate this crop of athletes that Kelvin Bell has coming in?
I think it's really good. I mean, Aaron Graves and Brian Allen, both 4-star kids. I think Aaron, I mean, he's ranked like the number 100 player in the country, but I think he honestly could be like a top 30. His highlights are just crazy. I know people say like he's not playing against the greatest talent, but you go and look at anybody else his size, not a whole lot of people are moving the way he does. No. Very explosive, powerful, and fast, and he's just a real great athlete. Brian Allen, really good defensive end, playing against some of the top players in the country at St. Thomas More, and I think he's going to do really well. And then Landon, I honestly don't know a whole lot about. Just talked to him, I guess texted him a few days ago once he committed and just told him congrats, but that's about it.
And Aaron, you not to heap praise on Aaron, but you're absolutely right. And I brought this up during our discussion with him is not only is he dominant, but his motor doesn't stop. And that's one thing that stood out to me. And I'm not a recruiter, but when I'm looking at a kid who's playing maybe not the best competition, I would expect at some point that motor to sort of, when you're that dominant, you don't have to try as hard. You're going to let up certain plays. And I didn't see that on tape. Now, again, I don't have the amount of exposure to tape that recruiters do, but I just didn't stop. So I agree with you. I foresee that translating. Now, one thing I also like to ask, goals. This can be anything. It can be football related. It could be family or hometown related. Life after football. What are your maybe short-term goals and long-term goals?
Just really making my parents proud. My last name proud. Just doing everything I can to make them happy. Getting a college degree would be huge. It was going to be huge for me. And then honestly at Iowa, just starting the first goal, just got to make the bus, make the bus. And then you can't start out. You got to start slow. Like there's steps. You can't just be on top of the mountain. So those are some of the short ones. Turn into possibly an all Big Ten caliber defensive lineman would be huge. I know everyone wants to play on Sundays, and that's everyone's goal, but I just want to start with those slow ones and not think ahead. And, I mean, I don't really have a whole lot more than that yet. Just starting out slow and make my way up.
Do you know what you want to major in?
I'm going to major in business.
Awesome. So as far as life after football, you have a list of careers that you would be interested in as it relates to business?
I'm not sure yet. I thought business was a pretty general degree that
absolutely.
I could lead a lot of different avenues. Not really sure what I want to do yet after football, so I thought business would be one of the better ones to set me up with multiple different ways to go.
And what are your hobbies other than football now?
I mean, I like hanging out with my friends a lot, going out, driving around. It's pretty fun. They got a lot of cool trucks and stuff, so we'll go out on a farm or something, do that. I like to go hunting. It's a pretty big passion of mine, and really just anything outdoors. And then I like to do some woodworking too.
You're going to fit in with the Iowa people, I think, pretty quickly. Yeah, absolutely. And I got a good friend from Leavenworth, and so when I did, I'll be honest, I didn't know where Lansing, Kansas was, and so I texted a friend of mine. I said, "Hey, do you know where Lansing is?" I get right next door to Leavenworth. So
yeah, like 5 minutes away.
And I did hear, and we talked about it before we went on this interview, Caden. You are in one of the few that again, I believe it was either Tyler Barnes or Kirk Ferentz. I think it was Tyler that brought up you'll be enrolling early. So that's gonna tickle people's ears when they hear that. What was the thinking on that, and when are you planning on arriving?
Yeah, just some of my goals, wanting to play early as possible, and kind of getting on campus and use this stuff were pretty good things for me. I'll move in January 16th and start school the 18th. So I got like less than a month away, and I'm pretty excited for it. And I'm just wanting to get up there and get in the weight program, get a spring football under my belt before some of the other freshmen, and try and get that extra experience that could hopefully lead me to playing earlier than it would if I just graduated in May.
And of course, Xavier also is planning on enrolling early, and so I mean, you brought up strength and whatnot, but what went into that decision? I mean, was it just a simple fact that you knew you could do it academically and it made sense, or was there more to it?
Yeah, I knew I could do it. Talking about it, just talking to my parents and some of my coaches, what we thought was best for me. Just pros and cons of going. Starting school earlier in college, maybe a little bit harder, and then staying and doing an extra year of an extra semester of senior year, which would probably be easy. Missing some other sports, like I wouldn't be able to powerlift, run track, or play basketball. And it just ultimately came down to what my goals were. And obviously one of them was playing as early as I can. And I thought it put me in the best position too. So it was never just, oh, do this, do that. It was a pretty long process. I was sitting down and thinking about it. And ultimately is what I thought would be best for me.
Am I right in saying you're a wrestler as well?
No wrestling.
You're not a wrestler. Why did I think you were a wrestler? Maybe it was just the physicality on tape. So did people try to get you to wrestle? I mean, you had to have been somebody that they looked at and was like, please go out for wrestling. Is Lansing, Kansas, do they have a good wrestling program?
Yeah, they've these last few years they've been pretty decent. I think my freshman through senior year, they've always tried to get me to go out for wrestling, but I was always a basketball player, and my dad didn't really want me to, because he thought I'd end up getting hurt me playing football and stuff. So I just stuck to basketball and powerlifting over the winter.
Well, it's good that you stuck to multiple sports. I know Iowa values kids who are multi-sport athletes, and we appreciate you taking the time today, and certainly are excited for you and your journey to Iowa. Congratulations on signing, and we look forward to seeing you in an Iowa uniform this coming spring, just a couple months away.
Yep, thank you.
Defensive line, I think the most underrated position as far as recruiting for that 22 class. Everybody talking about the defensive backs. I think tight end has maybe been. I thought tight end was well recruited this round. They got a couple with Cale Vanderbush and Addison Estrenga. We have an interview with Addison Estrenga coming up on a future pod. But I think the defensive line has been solid. I mean, you look at Brian Allen, who committed and signed on signing day, and of course Caden Crawford, who, along with Aaron Graves, were committed for a long time. Aaron Graves committed for even longer. But all three of those guys are signed, ready. And again, you've got two of those three in Crawford and Allen who will be here this spring. Crawford moving in to Iowa City tomorrow. And then Aaron Graves will be here later this summer, I would guess. So hope you enjoyed the interview. Again, really nice kid out of Lansing. And I know the roads are probably slippery on the way up to Iowa City, so best wishes to Caden and safe travels for him and his family on Sunday. Appreciate you listening to our edition of Brada's Branded Thoughts, week 187. We will talk to you on our next edition in a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, enjoy our post-game coverage after every Iowa men's basketball game. And, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel for regular Hawkeye football and Hawkeye basketball content all year round.